Hi Luke, let's get going with your forehand. I'm gonna slow it down a little bit and let them run. And at full speed, if we're looking at your forehand, it looks good. So there are a lot of components that are really good and you can really build on them. But there are some things that you can also really work on. So let's get into it. The number one that I'm always looking at, that I always start with, is your grip. And that looks to be a semi-Western grip. I don't think you're in a full Western grip because I think your underside of the index finger and knuckle and the meaty part of the palm are not quite on this edge here. They're on bevel 4. So this is a good grip. But what we always have to understand is that every grip demands a certain swing path, swing shape, and contact point. And when I'm letting this run now in a little bit slower, what I find very consistent is that your contact point is very jammed. It's too close to you in this distance here. And you see that as you're making contact, you have a 90-degree angle. And that is not ideal. You can absolutely have some kind of a bend in there, especially if you tend to have a little bit more extreme grip, and the semi-Western is tending towards more extreme, but this here is too close. And if we're looking at other contact points, that is repeated, right? So that also is too high. So you catching that here, here's the ball. That's almost above your head. So ideally we want to get the ball between shoulder and hip. So on this one, you did a good job moving up to it, but you actually moved into the ball and took it at apex, which usually is what I absolutely want. But if you want to take the ball on the rise, on that one, you needed to move up a lot more to catch that ball then somewhere around here, which is chest high, or absolutely not a bad thing, move back and let that ball then come back into your strike zone. So that's a footwork related issue. And again, I'm letting this run. That happens quite frequently. This is probably one of your better ones. See how far in front you hit that ball? That is more comfortable. That is what we want to replicate. And I'll go over how you can replicate that in a second. Just to show you one more, I think that also is coming pretty high. So that's above your head, right? And no matter who you are going to lose control. And then also we see this contact point here, the swing shape there. So again, if you want to take this ball here on the rise, because you are moving forward, again, that's a really good thing. You would want to catch the ball anywhere from here, because that is hip height for you. So anywhere from here to here. And that means you would have to move up to here in the court for you where you are there, or about here. And that is really difficult to do, right? Because you got to be really fast in A, seeing it, and then B, putting the two things together. I see it, and then I also move up aggressively to the ball. So for the most part, again, it is easier to let that ball drop, and you can also move back, and that is a little easier to control. I'm going to link my latest video, or one of my latest videos, down in the description, because that's exactly what I was talking about in that video, and I show you the footwork on how to move effectively to balls both ways, moving up to the ball, taking it on the rise, and also dropping back. All right, so now let's keep going with things that I do like that you have to build on, need to build on. What I absolutely like is, let's go to the start of a motion. Left hand on throat of the racket and your unit turn. So what I do like is how your left arm comes back and lifts. And what that does, obviously, is that the racket head is above your hand, and it does so the entirety of the stroke. This here is really good, that your left hand goes past your midline. So that is well done. Continue working on that, keeping that up. The other thing that I really like is the side with which you're going to make contact is pointing down. You have, albeit a little late, a lock-in position, meaning that the butt cap points to the incoming ball and your racket face is below the wrist. So those are all components that are fundamentals that you want to keep. They're good. However, you're still making contact here too close. Again, it's the swing shape here. And what that then does is, for you to still make contact somehow, you got to roll over the ball really quickly and there's no extension. But you still see that you have to brush up really steeply because otherwise you wouldn't even be able to make contact. The same thing here on this ball. To my mind, it's not really needed to come up as steeply. I would like to see more extension. So a longer, starting of course with a contact point further out in front, because then it makes it obviously a lot easier to extend through the ball, and you're still coming around and then follow either over your shoulder, over your biceps. Either one is fine. So if I'm looking at the next one, you're letting that drop there a lot. So you have that on your boots basically. And even if you're hitting with the ball machine, there's variation in the feeds. And that is the key, to move either up. On that one, you needed to move up, or on the higher one if you're deciding that you're dropping back. But a lot of it is a footwork issue, because if you're in the wrong position, doesn't matter what you do with your arms, it's going to be not the ideal ball. Late contact point, and again, there's no extension. I'll show you what I mean there by putting you next to another player. All right, so we have Fabio Fognini down here, and from this position, you're not necessarily as far off, right? You have your left arm here, racket is back. He has a little bit of a different preparation, but that is not the issue here. But when we then see it on the forward swing here, continue to look at the swing shape here. There is a little bit of a bend, and he's probably in a little bit more extreme grip than you, but it's not as far off. Again, little bit of a bend, but the important part is here. See how much more air there is. There's more extension here. It's not quite as crowded in terms of distance to the ball from the core. And that's almost next to you, I want to say. So you're definitely here catching that ball a little too late. It's almost 90 degrees. This is not necessarily one of the worst ones, but you're getting the idea. And of course, he can drive through the ball longer. Doesn't mean that it's all a linear, just a forward motion. Of course, there then is that angular movement, that rolling over the ball. But you see how long it takes him basically to start breaking the wrist here. And what that means is that the racket side with which he hit is only now starting to come around, and he finishes with the side with which he hit facing to the outside as opposed to yours. Right? This here would be something that I would expect to see when somebody drills the ball at you with 200 miles per hour. I'm deliberately exaggerating, but since you know where the ball's coming from, it's the same pace as every other feed from the ball machine. This here to me is really last resort. And now let's get into the timing. How can you prevent this? Okay, I'm also gonna let this run here A little bit slower. Yep, and there you're mimicking it. You're right. You're absolutely right. A little bit maybe to the side of you, a little late. Yep. And you also notice here from the back then that in order for you to make contact, see how crowded that is here? You basically have to bring your entire body around. And yes, you will bring the right hip and the right shoulder around. That is absolutely what you want to do, but not in an effort to get out of the way, but because you load it so dynamically off your back leg and you're using all your energy to get into the ball. Most all of these look to me like you're falling off to your left, and then you see what happens. Either you hit it late, and that's kind of still the best case scenario, or you hit it late and miss it outright and or lose a lot of power. So let's talk about the timing, because your preparation in itself is good. Start it sooner. So you see that here, the ball is about to bounce and you're still having your racket in front of you here. So as the ball is bouncing, while you're kind of hiding that a little bit with your body here, let's say that the ball is bouncing here. This is not bad if you were now to drop and drive into the ball. But see here what happens. Now we're going to see the ball in a second. Your racket is still on its way back. We're seeing the ball again. It's still on its way back. And only now are you reversing, meaning you've come to the furthest part of your take back, and only now are you on your way forward, and that's too late. So as a rule of thumb, for a rally ball, and I think that's what you have the setting on, you want to have your racket at the furthest point of your take back as the ball is bouncing. So again, if this were the furthest part of your take back, you were not to turn even more, which is good, then this would be ideal, right? You got your racket here, racket tip is up. As the ball now starts to rise up to you, you could just let the racket drop and drive. But instead it's still moving away, moving away, moving away. And don't get into anything, oh, the racket cannot get further than here. It absolutely can, and you're not doing that, right? You're not breaking the plane. You still have it to the right side of your body. You are just initiating your take back a little too late, and then it's difficult while you're mid-swing to speed up that rhythm, which then when you're playing with a real life partner, real life person, you may have to change the rhythm a little bit because you have to adjust to every ball differently. But again, if I can get another one where we can see the bounce, we want to try to initiate that turn sooner. Here we go. Here's the ball. You see it just left the machine. I would say it's probably above the net now. It's further than the net. Ball's about to bounce and you're still all the way here. Okay, can't see the bounce, but it's already rising up to you here. That actually is not as dramatic as some of the other ones. However, I would love to have that a little bit more in front. And the benefit is, of course, that in one fluid motion, you can now start accelerating up to the ball. But if you catch that ball further in front, you have an additional distance in which your racket can gain pace. So you're getting more power, but to my mind, more important, to be honest, more control. And also, you can get more topspin on the ball, which is easier, of course, than to control the ball. Makes it easier to keep the ball in the court. And then just to give you one more example here of what also to work on the distancing, the spacing, right? So that is going to be too far away a little bit, which then of course gives you a little bit more of an extended arm, which in that case is not bad, but see where you're making contact, that's almost above your head. So work on an earlier preparation, especially when you work with the machine. You know exactly where the ball's coming to. I would not mind if you literally start in this position, right here, the way that you're prepped, as the ball's already coming out of the machine. So that as the ball is taking this distance here, you're then continuing to get into a deeper unit turn, and as the ball is bouncing, you're basically in this position here already. So the ball bounces, you can let the racket drop and you can drive up to it.